Wethersfield native Ann Brickley is the Republican-endorsed candidate in the 1st Congressional District, where she's going to face Congressman John Larson. Brickley is a former GE executive who worked with the United Technologies Research Center and led business process improvement for a GE division. She's a mother, she's a licensed professional engineer, and she's also a certified master gardener. Also, Christine Stewart of Connecticut News Junkie is sticking around to start our conversation with Ann. Thanks for both of you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I just wanted to know, one of the big issues in the 1st Congressional District is the New Haven to Springfield rail or the New Britain to Hartford busway. Mm-hmm. There seems to be some dispute among the constituents over which you guys should be funding.
Sure. I think when you look at any of these types of problem, Christine, it's really important to understand the problem that we're trying to solve. And for the busway, which I do support, the problem that's being solved there is the traffic on I-84 west of Hartford, particularly during the commuter traffic hours. Mm-hmm. So there was a study done years ago using federal transportation data and models, and they concluded that the busway was the most cost-effective method of getting the largest ridership into the city of Hartford from the west. They also looked at other alternatives. It wasn't feasible to widen the highway. They looked at rail and found that that was a more expensive alternative. And so the busway seems like the best approach. The other thing about the busway is that if the project gets started right now, it will be complete in 3 years. And we do have federal funding that's already been received. So the design is done, the right-of-ways are done, we've received the federal funding, and it'll be done in a few years. If we put that project on hold and decide to go with another project, we have to go through a design phase, a federal approval phase, and then a build phase, and that would take significantly longer. So I do support the busway, but you have to keep in mind what problem we were trying to solve. A separate problem is the transportation from New Haven up to Springfield, and I think there was a pretty good editorial in the Current this weekend I guess it was in the JI, about the cost effectiveness of that approach, and that's something that I would certainly want to look at before I commented on that. Having said that, I met with the Bristol Chamber of Commerce yesterday and again today, and they have some potential flaws that they found in the data, and I want to go back and research some of the things that they suggested and reinvestigate the busway.
You know, I know that you stress a lot your experience in the business world. Yes. I mean, can you give us an example of something that maybe you did at GE specifically that you think could work, as a senator?
Sure. A lot of what we did at GE is take a look at the various business processes and find out where there's waste in that process. What are people doing that doesn't necessarily add value to the customer? So it basically starts with examine your business from your customer's point of view. What are the requirements that are important to them? What are the things that they need to have in the way of the product and the services? And what are some of the things that you do that nobody even cares about? So it starts with the customers, or in this case it would be the constituents, and what adds the most value to them. So in many cases, what we found at GE, as well as many of my other clients, that we're doing an awful lot of work that doesn't necessarily add value, and that could be streamlined. It could eliminate the waste, put the attention on the things that do make a difference. So we've been able, for example, you could look at lighting panel boards. We were able to cut the cycle time for what had been 6 weeks to get a panel board from an order to delivery to the customer down to just a couple of days.
Wow.
And that was really important to the customers, and it was a win-win for everybody. The customers got their products faster, GE had a higher margin on the project, everybody really won.
Interesting.
Why do you want to run for Congress, especially somebody, you're running as a political newcomer against this entrenched incumbent who is in a leadership position within the House, so you're taking on a lot there.
Yes, it's a great question, Christine. I really want to run because I feel that the skills that I have is really what Congress needs right now. Many of the solutions they come up with do not address the root causes of the problems, and as an engineer, that's what I've been doing for my entire life, is making sure that we define the problem correctly and we come up with solutions that address the problems. And as an entrenched incumbent, what you find is many people go to Washington and get disconnected from their constituents and what their constituents needs. And when they come up with, for example, the stimulus bill was supposed to create 41,000 jobs here in the state of Connecticut, and the last set of data that I looked at, they had created or saved only 7,000 jobs at a cost of over $325,000 per job created or saved. That's not the best use of the taxpayer dollars. There's a much smarter way of solving these problems. And I think that the entrenched incumbents are part of the problem. Our congressman is still saying that the country's on the right track and the stimulus bill created jobs. And my question to him is, where are those jobs? Connecticut's lost 35,000 jobs since the stimulus bill went into effect. So
couldn't there also be an argument, though, that we're going to be losing Senator Dodd,
yes,
who obviously has a lot of power, weight in Washington. If we were to replace Congressman Larson as well, I mean, that's a lot of power, a lot of sway that Connecticut would immediately lose. And could some people say, I don't know, maybe it's not the right time. Maybe we shouldn't, change our whole lineup all at once.
Again, I think that the entrenched incumbents represent part of what's wrong with Washington. I don't think that the solutions Washington is coming up with are solving today's problems. I also think that earmarks, if you will, are a big part of the problem, and some of the people who've been there for a long time and are advocating for earmarks are really making matters even worse. For every tax dollar that Connecticut sends to Washington, we only get 69 cents back. It would be much smarter if the government took a smaller role and let the states decide how to spend the money.
Where do you stand on health care reform? I know that some Republicans want to repeal what the Democrats did pass.
Yeah. Well, first of all, in terms of health care, I think the goals were laudable. I certainly applaud the goals of increasing quality of health care and provider greater access for all Americans and lowering health care costs. But the most important ingredient of that, in order to provide the access, we need to lower costs. And my problem with the health care bill is it does nothing to lower cost. In fact, it put in mandates that's going to make health care even more expensive. So for that reason, my preference would be to repeal it, and I would vote to repeal it. Having said that, I think that it's highly unlikely that that's going to occur. So the next best approach is unfund segments of it, and then I would work on lowering the cost of health care. In other words, putting an end to frivolous lawsuits, which I think if you talk to any doctor today, they will tell you that that's one essential ingredient if this health care bill is going to work effectively. We need to address tort reform.
We are now hearing that the sub-base could once again be at risk of closure. What do you think that we are doing wrong or not doing enough of to eliminate that threat?
I would have to do a little bit more research on that, Laurie, and get back to you. But I think the most important things are for the sub-base to be connected with the constituents and what's their needs in terms of the best product and the delivery of that product. If the decision-making process is not reflecting those qualities, that would something I'd have to dig into more.
Okay. We hear a lot about how Connecticut is not business friendly. Do you think that there's something that a U.S. Senator could do to change that on the national level to say, across the country, hey, why don't you all send your businesses to Connecticut?
I think at the national level we could certainly help creating policy in Washington that benefits all states, Connecticut as well as many others. At the local level, I think Connecticut has an issue with respect to lawsuits. I think that we have certainly a much higher percentage of suits than many other states do, and that's something that we need to address at the local level as well as the national level.
All right. Well, thank you very much. She's Ann Brickley. She's a Republican, and she is running for Congress against Congressman John Larson. Thanks so much for being here.
My pleasure.
Up ahead, are you paying attention to the race for state comptroller? GOP candidate Jack Ortuli is here to tell us why we should be watching.